Hello everyone and welcome to Game 2 of the FIDE World Cup 2025. We have a wonderful game between Andrey, Esipenko and Wei Yi. Game 1, if you haven't seen it, do check it out. It's a crazy game. Wei Yi had to find a unique series of 3 brilliant moves just to stay in the game. Not gonna mention what happened because you might not have seen what happened, but yeah, do check it out. This one is also very nice. Now Esipenko has the white pieces, and let's check it out. The other pair, Sindarov versus Yakuboev, ended in a draw both games, and I will not be showing them because they're just really quick drawish games. I know they are good friends, and probably they wanna, they don't wanna want it to be decided in classical. They're probably just gonna, blitz it out, and then whatever happens. Probably the best thing to do. But yeah, Esipenko and Wei Yi are definitely brawling it out. So let's see what happened in this one. Andrey with white opens with pawn to e4. We have pawn to e5 by Wei Yi, knight f3, knight to f6. He goes for the Petrov defense, and knight captures on e5. This is the classical variation and the most straightforward way you can meet the Petrov. We have d6, knight f3, and knight captures on e4. Again, all standard. This is the classical line, and there are some popular ways you can meet this, like pawn to d4, pawn to d3. Knight to c3 is what Andrey goes for. It is my favorite line against the classical Petrov, as it really offers you, very different ways of playing, and you open up the bishop pair immediately. So knight captures on c3. We have d captures on c3, one of the rare cases where you don't capture towards the center. Everyone teaches children you should capture towards the center, then build a strong center. But here it's just not great. For example, pawn to g6, pawn to d4, bishop to g7. And now, however you want to develop, let's say bishop to b5 with check c6, let's say bishop to d3, castle's kingside, and after castle's kingside, it's just not all that impressive. The knight comes to f6, and black has a very natural way of developing. The pawn probably comes to d5, and so on. But here, d captures on c3. Now both of the bishops open up immediately, and things could go wrong, well, basically right here. This is one position that I often like to mention, where there are many cases where people play bishop g4 and they just ruin their game. Maybe it's not lost with engine perfect play, but it's very easy for white to gain advantage. After h5, now you have to admit that that was a silly move and move the bishop, but of course no one ever does that. So they capture, but even that sometimes not. Sometimes they go bishop h5, and then you just catch them with queen d5. You attack b7 and the bishop, and now they have to capture. And after captures, you have a beautiful open position. You have the bishop pair. You're going to play bishop f4, castle's queenside, bishop wherever. You can play g4, h4. So the position plays itself. In hands of a strong player, this should be winning for white. And yeah, if you like this and more such tricky moves, first link in the description below. Download Lotus Chess and learn stuff like this. But okay, d captures on c3. These guys, of course, don't need that. They know their theory. Bishop to e7. And now bishop to e3 is the most popular. Bishop to f4, a bit more exotic. We have knight to c6, knight to c6, queen to d2, and bishop to e6. We have castle's queenside, and now the question is, can you capture that pawn on a2? Well, it's actually incredibly complicated, but you still can't. I mean, you can. We can show it. I mean, this is a classical game. We can show lines. So, of course, you trap the bishop with the pawn to b3. Now, let's say a5. You want to play a4 and capture here. Let's say king to b2. Let's say pawn to a4. And now you can capture on a2, but also you don't have to. You can go bishop to b5, and then if a captures on b3, c captures on b3, that bishop is never really getting developed. For example, rook a5, you're going to capture on c6, give a check, b captures, rook to a1, you go after the bishop again, let's say queen to a8, you defend, and now rook h to e1, and it's incredibly difficult for black to hide or, to continue the game, unless you know what you're doing. You castle kingside and you give up the bishop on e7. That's, some beautiful chess right there. Rook captures, and now you even give up the bishop. So, yeah, if you're ready to do this, you can actually play that. And now after rook captures on a5, of course, you cannot touch the bishop. Rook b8 would be deadly. Queen captures, now you can capture it, and now You don't go in with the rook, but instead queen to b5 check. And after king to c2, now you bring the rook to a8, and you're down 2 pieces, a bishop and a knight. But you know, good luck surviving this in a blitz game or even a bullet game or even a classical game. I mean, it's not easy. You'd burn a lot of time here as white. So yeah, it's not impossible. I mean, you have to consider it, as it definitely is an option. But okay, queen d7, we not interested in that. He's more of a, you know, I'm giving up material, not I'm taking material. And again, still all theory, king to b1, most played, knight g5, second most played. But here we have bishop to e2. And the first moment where Esipenko spent some time, he spent 12 minutes on this move. And it's incredibly rare. There are some instances. A6, for example, is a known move. Pawn to h6 is a known move. Zhang played it against Dingliren, and that game ended in a draw. But here we have castles queenside, and it sorry, first bishop to e2, castles queenside by black, and it is now, as of move 10, that we have a completely new game. I was actually trying to castle queenside with already having a castled queenside king. But okay, castled queenside, and now we have knight to g5. So what is happening here? Again, there are many moves you can consider here. In the game, bishop captures and g5 was played, which, okay, you have to decide whether you want to give up this bishop or this bishop. Again, just for fun, I will show you a really crazy line, bishop g4, which seems like shouldn't be possible, as you're allowing knight captures on f7. But look at this, knight captures on f7, and now after bishop captures on e2, now what do you play here? You might say, okay, let's capture the bishop, and we're capturing the rook next. Well, then you get queen f5, attacking the bishop and the knight. And the best white has is to capture on h8, and after queen captures on f4, which comes with check, king b1, you capture on h8, and you have bishop and knight for a rook, and black is just much better here, probably even winning. So after bishop captures on e2, you would have to capture on d8, then comes bishop captures on d1, and now after knight captures on c6, queen captures on c6, you'd go rook captures on d1, queen captures on g2, you'd get something like this, where black is up a pawn, but white has some very nasty threats here, and then even queen g4 puts pressure on the bishop, because if you capture the bishop, falls with check, and it's a crazy line that goes even further. You move the bishop, rook e8, you invite queen captures on a7, and after that, bishop g5 check. And now if the king moves, you just pick up the rook on d1, so you have to play f4, but now every capture comes with check, captures, and captures, king to b1, and now look at this, rook e2. What is this? Queen to a8 check, king to d7, queen captures on b7, and now look at this, queen d2. So it's still equal, but I mean, black's the one playing for a win here. Luckily, white is in time, queen to b5, this comes with check, king to e7, you get the queen into the game, and okay, I mean, it's a crazy line, captures, rook captures on h2, equal material, you're going to push some pawns on the queen side, black will push on the king side, and yeah, I mean, you have to calculate so much just in order to get an equal game. But that's the beauty of chess. So bishop captures on g5, not going for anything crazy. We have bishop captures and pawn to f6. We have bishop back to e3, and now pawn to h5. Again, not worried about the a2 pawn, because it cannot be captured. Maybe it can, but no one ever does it, because if you lose, then you're just going to be silly, like Bobby Fischer against Boris Spassky. So pawn to b3, we have queen to f7, nicely placing the queen on this diagonal, but it's hard to say whether, you know, it's possible to break this open. It's definitely possible to try. We have, after queen f7, bishop to b5, trying to ruin black's pawn structure, bishop back to d7. We have rook h to e1, and rook h to e8. We have king to b2, improving the position of the king, and pawn to a6, first getting rid of the bishop before getting this bishop to a more active diagonal. So bishop back to f1, we have pawn to h4, maybe trying to get that pawn all the way to h3. So pawn to h3 from Esipenko, and pawn to g5. Sorry, not pawn to g5, bishop to e6 first was played, and only after f3, yeah, that's what I meant, because f4 can also be played, but as f4 wasn't played to stop g5, now he takes advantage of it and plays pawn to g5. We have bishop to f2 and bishop to f5. Again, not much for black here and not much for white here, but Esipenko does have twice the time. We have rook to c1, and here again, Yuri Polgar was commenting on this position, saying that it's not really a move that does all that much, except burns your opponent's time, because you don't mind if your opponent captures an e1, but rook to c1, you're gonna burn some time, you know, considering whether it actually does something or not. And Wei Yi decided not to capture. He played queen to g6. He played it after some 4 minutes, which is a lot since he had 19 minutes on the clock. So rook to c1, although it doesn't really do all that much, yes, it does protect the c2 pawn somewhat, but it does burn a lot of time. And if you're wondering what happens if you capture, well, nothing really. You just recapture, and if rook to e8, you can go bishop c4. You're being annoying a little bit, probably burn a bit more black's time. Bishop, queen g6, you're going to move the rook, probably c1 or d1, and the game continues. There's really nothing there, but, you know, you're shuffling pieces around and waiting for your opponent to go into time trouble and then hopefully make a mistake. So after rook to c1, queen to g6, Wei Yi again nicely places his queen and bishop on this diagonal, and pawn to a4. Okay, we have rook to e5, preparing to double up on the e file, and also you do not mind the capture on e5, because then you fix your pawn structure, and then the rook also gets the d file. So you're not considering that. Rook e2, we have rook dta, doubling up and doubling up. So it's a doubling up, if that's a thing. We have rook 8 to e7, again, you know, waiting, maybe white captures on e5, but no, just bishop to g1. We have queen to e8, now tripling up on the e file, and bishop to h2, forcing a trade. Rook captures, and rook captures on e2. So both rooks are eliminated off the board. Bishop captures, and now you could maybe go queen to g6, but Wei Yi says, no, I'm going to centralize queen to e6. My queen is very, very powerful here. And also, I don't know, because obviously these guys are much, much stronger. But, you know, I would play something like this in hopes that my opponent decides that maybe, okay, we have nothing here. Maybe decides, okay, let's repeat moves. Let's get a draw. He plays a silly move like king b1. All of a sudden, queen captures on b3. Of course, it's not happening at this level, but it's not unthinkable, you know. Crazier things have happened at this level. But okay, after queen e6, we have bishop to c4, attacking Wei Yi's queen. Wei Yi goes back, queen to e8, and now we have bishop back to e2. Again, a move that can be considered as something like queen d5, but it doesn't really do all that much, because once you go knight e5, what's white's plan? If you try bishop captures on a6, something like Wei Yi did against Esipenko yesterday, then after captures and queen to a8 check, let's say king d7, queen captures on a6, yes, you do have a passed a pawn, but let's say knight to c6, you start pushing those pawns, pawn to b4, the c2 weakness ruins everything for you, because it's very easy for black to just play, let's say queen e1, let's say b5, you attack the queen, knight b8, queen b7, and I would say, you can have the piece, I'm just going to play queen d2, and that's it, game over. You capture the knight, or you don't, doesn't really matter, just queen captures, king a3, queen captures, king to a2, bishop e6 check, king to b1, and now bishop to b3 with a check and checkmate, and that's pretty much it. What you could do here, maybe instead of queen d5, is go bishop d5, that's also one way to do it, and then let's say knight e7 attacks the bishop, you go queen e3, maybe you're being a little bit annoying, bishop g6 defends the queen, and then bishop e6, let's say king b8, queen d4, you nicely centralize. You know, definitely a way a computer would seek advantage. But Esipenko says, all right, you know, I've had enough. Let's call it a day, and let's brawl out tomorrow in the tiebreak. So bishop to e2 was played. Wei Yi repeats queen to e6. Again, he could look for more with queen g6, but he's obviously satisfied and says, all right, let's call it a day. Bishop to g1. We have king to d7. Now the king is even much safer here in the middle of the board. Bishop to e3. We have knight e5, and now queen to d4, trying to get the queen all the way to a7. But Wei Yi just kicks the queen away. Attacks the queen, defends a7. We have queen d2, knight e5, queen d4, knight c6, queen to d2. And he was in this position on move 37 that the players agreed to a draw, or rather it was a draw by threefold repetition. So yeah, both semifinal matches go into tiebreaks. We'll see what happens tomorrow, as tomorrow we will know the finalists, and we will know definitely two people who will qualify for the candidates tournament, but one will be decided in the battle for third place. So it's still going to be very, very interesting, even on the final day, because I don't know, when you guys are watching this tournament, are you watching as to who will win the World Cup or who will qualify for the candidates? I imagine these guys, for them it's who will qualify for the candidates, but it's also a big tournament, so winning it also goes a long way. It's one of the few tournaments that Magnus Carlsen never won, and then he really wanted to win it in 2023, and then he won it, and then he just said, okay, I won it all. But he didn't even want to play the World Chess Championship cycle, even though he could qualify via 5 different means. But yeah, he also won that. But yeah, very nicely played by both of them. There were some lines maybe that could have been explored, and I'm sure the players have explored them in their minds. We just never got to see them, and that is why it's important to analyze videos like this, and even in more detail, which I could, but then the videos would just last forever. Maybe we could try that, but I'm always trying to find that perfect pace, and maybe not show way too few lines, but also not too many. So I don't know, and maybe the Goldilocks zone of chess lines to explore. So I really hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Mikhail Basalia, Andrea Sorcinelli, Eddie Sfer, Brian Pratt, and David Gasparian for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.